Thank you for coming to class tonight for our Wednesday night study. So wonderful to have you here in person or online. I was saying this earlier, try to keep the side conversations to a minimum because everything's mic'd. Everything's on the microphone. If you have a question, please don't ask your neighbor, ask me, because someone else probably has the same question. If you are at home, this is all up. There's 3 different paintings we're going to look at tonight. Those are the green tabs directly on top of the stream. And then on top of that is actually the outline that we're going to read off of. So it should be pretty self-explanatory as to what we're doing. So what have you learned so far from our Adventures in Art class? What have you learned? What have you learned, Mike?
All kinds of hidden hints relating to something in the pictures. Many obvious, many are not obvious.
Okay, and you call them hints.
Hints, yes.
Hints. The guys who painted these, probably mostly men, probably at the time, put them together very carefully.
Oh yes, absolutely.
Yeah, very carefully.
One thing is that I don't have the terminology right, but there's a focal point, and then the artist is aware that this is where people are going to focus. So we might put the Virgin Mary somewhere, or the subject somewhere out of that, so everything isn't focused on that one.
Right. No, I agree with that. It's a focal point. In other words, the artist has designed the painting so that your eye will go a particular place, and then go a particular place. And and that's a really good observation. Yeah, I'm looking at Mary Lou. I would call it a focal point, right? I think he's right. I think your terminology is correct, Bob. Thank you.
Well,
that's great.
What's the vanishing point then?
The vanishing point is where everything's going toward. In other words, everything's sort of disappearing, and normally it's in the middle of the painting. And I tell you go home and Google this. Vermeer is really famous for shifting his vanishing points around the painting into various locations. And you'll see it when all you gotta do is look at the painting and you'll be like, oh. It's V-E-M-E-E-R, Vermeer. V-E-R-M-E-E-R, Vermeer. Really incredible painter. Oh, what else have you learned?
Oh.
Yeah.
The symbolism of colors.
Like, can you give me some examples?
Like Mary's usually wearing blue.
Okay.
And then some of the angels, gold was a symbolic color.
Yeah.
Purple.
Purple, definitely. And white?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, great observation, Joyce. There's symbolism behind all these colors. And what happens is, as we get into modern art, we're doing mostly classical art because that's a lot of biblical figures are classical art. But into modern art, they get more and more into the use of color. So even more so. But yeah, you're very right. That's a great observation. Anything else we've learned? Yeah.
Our perception has changed, or the artist has given us a different perception over time. It's changed over time.
Okay, artists' perceptions have changed over time?
What they're giving us is a perception.
Oh, what you're giving us is changed over time. Okay, yeah. Okay, great. Thank you. All right. So we are going to do the Transfiguration tonight. Actually, Transfiguration Sunday was the last Sunday before Lent on our liturgical calendar. I didn't preach on it. Sorry about that. But in Matthew, Mark, and Luke, in all 3 of what are called the Synoptic Gospels, there is what's called the Transfiguration, where Jesus goes up on a mountain and takes Peter, James, and John with him, and he's what's called transfigured, where he becomes as he was probably before he came down and took on human flesh. And we're going to read about it. So, David, can you read for me again? Sure. Did you give me that first paragraph? It's in Matthew 17. It's the first 8 verses. Thanks.
6 days later, Jesus took with him Peter and James and his brother John and led them up a high mountain by themselves. And he was transfigured before them, and his face shone like the sun, and his clothes became bright as light. Suddenly there appeared to them Moses and Elijah talking with him. Then Peter said to Jesus, "Lord, it is good for us to be here. If you wish, I will set up 3 tents here, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah." While he was still speaking, suddenly a bright cloud overshadowed them, and a voice from the cloud said, "This is my son, the beloved. With him I am well pleased. Listen to him." When the disciples heard this, they fell to the ground and were overcome by fear. But Jesus came and touched them, saying, "Get up and do not be afraid." And when they raised their eyes, they saw no one except Jesus himself alone.
That's great. That's great. Can you give me the next paragraph, Anna?
As they coming down the mountain, Jesus ordered them, "Tell no one about the vision until after the Son of Man has been raised from the dead." And the disciples asked him, "Why then? Do the scribes say that Elijah must come first?" He replied, "Elijah is indeed coming and will restore all things. But I tell you that Elijah has already come, and they did not recognize him, but they did to him whatever they pleased. So also the Son of Man is about to suffer at their hands." Then the disciples understood that he was speaking to them about John the Baptist.
All right. Wayne, can you give me the last paragraph on the inside?
When they came to the crowd, a man came to him, knelt before him, and said, "Lord, have mercy on my son, for he has epilepsy and suffers terribly. He often falls into the fire and often into the water. And I brought him to your disciples, but they could not cure him." Jesus answered, "You're faithless and perverse generation, how much longer must I be with you? How much longer must I put up with you? Bring him here to me." And Jesus rebuked the demon, and they came out of him, and the boy was cured from that moment. Then the disciples came to Jesus privately and said, "Why could we not cast it out?" He said to them, "Because of your little faith. For truly I tell you, if you have faith the size of a mustard seed, and will say to this mountain, 'Move from here to there,' and it will move, and nothing will be impossible for you."
All right, great, thanks. Before we get into the pictures, observations about this story?
Well, just something I've wondered about. Suddenly appeared to Moses and Elijah, but they recognized them. They died hundreds of years before, probably. So how do they know? Were they somehow dressed differently, or name tags, or?
Yeah, right, had name tags. It could have been divine knowledge. The way I think of it is, have you ever been in a dream and you see somebody and you know who they are, and you don't know how you know, but you just know?
I don't think so, but
I have.
Okay.
You just know something's happening, or you know something's this way or whatever, and it's not really obvious in the dream, but you just know that this is the way it is. And I think they just knew, and I think that's how. I think this was all a bit of a vision sequence anyway, almost like a dream or a vision, all happening in front of them. Other observations?
well, Jesus rebukes his disciples for
He does.
"Oh, ye of little faith."
Yes.
But they have a lot of faith by following him around.
Yeah. This is from Matthew. Matthew has muted Mark's. Mark is really unkind. Yeah, that's probably the right word. Matthew has muted it a little bit, and Luke will mute it even more. But yeah, Jesus. They were following around, but they did not get it. Particularly in the Gospel of Mark, they just did not understand what was going on. They're arguing about who's the greatest, right? He's saying I'm going to be crucified, and they're like, "Hey, I'm the greatest. They didn't get it. And so, yeah, I think he had reason to rebuke them.
If Jesus came back today, he wouldn't be dressed like he was back then.
Probably not.
How many of us would accept him as that person as Jesus?
Right. Maybe. What were you going to say?
Well, I was just going to comment, that must mean that they had no faith. They didn't even have the faith the size of a mustard seed if Jesus' words were to go off of.
But that may be us too. Yeah, I don't disagree with you, Keaton. All right, yeah, Anna?
Question, it says here that, he said Elijah is coming, right? But then the disciples thought it was
John the Baptist. Yeah.
So is that right? Is that
Yeah.
John the Baptist?
In Jewish faith, they believe Elijah is coming as the precursor to the Messiah, and that's actually from Malachi. I don't remember the exact chapter. I think it's Malachi 3 or 4. And they say, before that great and terrible day of the Lord, Elijah will come and will turn the hearts and all this stuff. And so in every Seder meal or Passover meal, the Jews put an empty chair at the table for Elijah. And what Jesus is saying is, yeah, they're asking about it. Was Elijah going to come? Because they've just seen Elijah. And what Jesus says is, well, Elijah already came, and it was John the Baptist, and they killed him. They beheaded him, right? And the same thing's going to happen to me. Maybe I won't be beheaded, but I'll be crucified instead. They did to him what they will, and they're going to do the same thing to me. It's basically what he's saying. So Jesus, in essence, is saying, Elijah has already come, and it was John the Baptist. And people just didn't realize it.
That fulfills the prophecy.
Yes, correct. Wait, yeah, according to Jesus, yes. Now, according to Jews, they would say it's not been fulfilled. It still needs to be fulfilled. So that's a difference.
It's a side of Jesus you sometimes don't see when Jesus says, "You faithless and perverse generation, how much longer must I be with you? How much longer must I put up with you?"
Yep. And like I said, that's muted compared to Mark. So it's even harsher if you read this in Mark. It's even harsher.
Who exactly is he talking to in that quote? Is he talking to the Father or the crowd, or?
He's probably talking to the disciples who have tried to cast out the demon. Because what the Father comes to him and says, you know, how my son, your disciples, he has a demon and the disciples couldn't cast it out. And I think he turns to the disciples and says, you perverse generation, how much longer must I be with you? And I think it's frustration that you know, they've been with him this time, they're following him, right? But they still haven't, and the power is available, and I think they still haven't learned how to take advantage of it, is the way I would look at it.
So they need to appear the father of the son had more faith than the disciples.
Yeah. Did you hear what he said? He said the Father and the Son had more faith than the disciples.
Yeah.
Yeah, he speaks quietly over there. He's soft-spoken, but what he says is good.
I think it's also interesting that after God speaks, the vision disappears.
Yeah.
I mean, they're gone.
Yep.
So it's just back to them again.
Yep, exactly. Why do you think Peter, go ahead, Joyce.
Oh, well, following that, I was just going to remark that it's so typical that the people are afraid. How often does Jesus say, don't be afraid, fear not?
Yep.
So many of his responses are, don't be afraid.
Yeah. And that's a typical response when anybody has a heavenly vision or sees an angel or whatever, do not fear.
Yeah.
Both Old and New Testament. Why do you think Peter said, Peter says, oh, it's good for us to be here, let's make the 3 shelters. What was he thinking? Why do you think he said that? It's verse 4. Lord, is it good for us to be here? If you wish, I will set up 3 tents here, one for you, one for Moses, one for Elijah.
I guess he felt out of place, like he shouldn't be there.
He could have felt out of place, like he shouldn't be there. This doesn't have a right answer, by the way. Commentators, deviate or disagree on this. So
I think he just wanted to be nice
you want to be nice, okay?
and trying to serve them.
Okay.
That's what I thought he was going
Yeah,
to do.
and that's a possibility.
Prepare to bed.
Yeah,
No, I agree with your comment. Wow, this is really happening. What do I do?
yeah. Some people think
Set up
they
some
were.
tents, I guess.
Some people think he didn't know what he was saying.
Yeah.
Some people thought he was scared. Some people just thought he wanted to maintain the vision because he realized he's seeing a heavenly vision. Maybe the tents were a way to maintain it. There's a lot of debate. So I'm not telling you there's a right answer. He may not have even known what he really said.
Well,
If you're seeing a heavenly vision, right?
these are very important people.
Yep.
And if they're, if you will, standing there in front of them,
Yep.
they might stay the night. Look at all the fun we can have tonight.
Yeah, look at all the fun we could have tonight.
Talk to them, learn a lot more stuff. I think it's an invitation to stay there more than anything else.
Okay, and that's a very loud possibility. He wanted to continue the vision, and yeah, that may be right as well. There's not a right answer to that, Mike. There's all kinds of speculation. All right, our first painting is this guy, Giovanni Bellini. He's a Venetian painter. He actually came from a family of painters, Jacopo Bellini. A lot of his work, unfortunately, is destroyed by fire, so we don't have a lot of it. He is considered one of the greatest Venetian painters. And you'll see, the painting is bright. He's got a good use of color. He actually is one of the first people to really start using oil paints. which allows him to put a lot of detail into the painting. And he's got a tremendous use of color. So let's hand this out. Take some, pass it around.
What were they painting with before oil, if he was one of the first?
Like egg and stuff like that. Yeah, just for different materials and paints. But at this point in time, we've gotten to oil paints, and it allows him to really paint some detail. So, what do you, and of course, I always ask this, what do you see in this painting? You see God? Okay. And where do you see God in the painting? Okay, that's Jesus in the middle, and that's God? Okay, yeah, that's fine, that's fine.
I see Moses on the left.
Okay, Moses is on the left. How do you know Moses is on the left?
He has a veil on his head.
Ah, he's got a veil on his head, okay. And why would Moses have a veil on his head?
When Moses was speaking personally to God, it had this effect where it caused his face to glow, so he would wear a veil over his face so that it was easier for him to speak with
the Israelites.
Everybody else.
Yeah. It's Exodus 34, he comes out, he's gotten all the plans of the temple, he comes out, oh. There you go. He comes out and his face is glowing and everybody's all intimidated. And so he put a veil over his face so he could talk with the Israelites. So that's Moses, and then Elijah's on the other side. Okay, what else you see?
Well, this doesn't look like them up on a high mountain.
Okay, doesn't look like a high mountain, does it? Looks like kind of the terra firma.
Yeah.
In fact, the high mountains are in the background, right?
Yeah, it looks like a plateau.
Yeah, it looks like a plateau, exactly.
Well, one of the things, this must be when they're hearing God speak, otherwise they'd be looking at Jesus, Moses, and Elijah.
Okay, they're not looking at Jesus, Moses, and Elijah. Okay, so God's spoken, they've probably fallen down, right? Okay, and are looking away. All right, great.
What's in the hand of Elijah?
Okay, and also in the hand of Moses. What are those? What is this thing? You got the blow up. Yeah, they're scrolls. What there's literacy is.
Five commandments.
Yeah, 5 commandments. Literacy is a big deal, and so lots and lots of figures. Not only here with Moses and Elijah, but Mary and all kinds of people almost always have something like a book or a scroll or something with them that's written as if they could read, as if Mary could read, and probably not. And so certainly as if Moses and Elijah could read, and I don't know if they could or not. Probably Moses could because he probably wrote. But they've got these scrolls with them. They're looking at the Word of God always, studying the Word of God.
JC has a halo.
Okay, who else has a halo, David, other than Jesus?
No.
Okay, nobody else has a halo. Only Jesus has a halo. What do you got, Mary Lou?
That was what I was.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
Who are the three people sitting down or kneeling but not standing?
Okay.
Peter, James, and John.
Okay, Peter, James, and John, as the story tells us. Do you have any clue who's Peter and who's James and who's John?
I'd put Peter in the middle because he's the oldest.
Okay, Peter's in the middle. You're right, and actually he's the primary disciple, right? So he would be in the middle. And which one's John? Which one's James?
I'll bet John is the dark one in the dark.
The one in the dark. Why do you say that, Mary Lou?
I don't know. He just looks.
He looks Johnish.
Just looks like John.
Yeah. I don't.
You just know.
I don't think John had golden curls.
Okay. Actually, you remember John is the disciple that Jesus loved, right? He never says that in the Gospel of John, but we assume that's true. And so he would be he's either in red or in this case, in pink.
Wrong.
So, well, you may be right. I didn't talk to Giovanni myself. But the guess of scholars is, Mary Lou, that John is over there on the right side, see with the pink, kind of that green, and that James is over there in more of the darker color. It's kind of almost like a navy blue over there on the other side.
So if God is speaking,
Mm-hmm.
and Christ is obviously in the transfiguration,
Yep.
this doesn't seem to be noticeable to others because dude's walking with his ox over there on the left side, and we've got a couple other people talking over there on the right side, and they aren't looking at this at all.
Okay, why, and it's a great point. Why would Giovanni do that? Because you're right, these other people around here are just kind of oblivious, right in the background. They're oblivious. And the only thing people you see are obviously Jesus with Moses and Elijah, right? And the disciples realize what's going on, these three disciples. Nobody else does. Why would he do that?
I'm sorry, no real,
No, nobody else, only these guys know what's going on. These people in the background are oblivious to what's going
well,
on.
this is a vision.
Oh, you think it's a vision?
Well, it says so, and so these are the only people who can see the vision.
Okay, so only the disciples are the only people that can see the vision of Jesus and Moses and Elijah.
That's my interpretation.
Okay? It could be, David, I don't disagree with Mike, it could be also that, you need to look for God. It's not going to come knock you over the head.
People are too busy to see.
Exactly. Thank you, Bob. People are often too busy to see because they're doing things here in the background, aren't they? They're plowing the fields over there on the left,
Talking.
right? They're going about other things.
Frequently, when there's some anomaly, if you would consider that an anomaly, animals pick up on it before humans. None of the animals seem to notice either.
None of the animals notice either. Okay. All right. What else you see here?
Well, up in the upper left is clearly something, to me, says fortress.
Okay. There's a fortress there in the upper left, or a house or castle, whatever that thing is.
It doesn't look like a house to me, it looks like a
Or it's
fortress.
a fortress or a castle.
It could be.
Okay. All right.
I'm wondering why the ground between the two sets of three people is torn up where none of the other ground seems to be torn up. Did they fall and, rip up the ground?
What? And even more so, David, there's like a fence here, isn't there?
Yes.
And there's like a chasm. I don't know what you want to call it, a canyon or a chasm or a ditch or whatever it is in front of them. And then, between the disciples and Jesus, there's not, it's not as big, but there's even kind of another little ditch or something like that, right? You see all that?
The dead tree.
Why? I'll get to the dead tree in a minute. Why would the painter do that to this? Why?
Is it the entryway to hell?
I think, and this is what scholars think, that the painter, this is Bellini, wants to say that you as the onlooker are viewing this from a distance. That there's a fence and a chasm between you and the actual vision of the transfiguration, and then there's some, not as much, but some distance between the disciples and Jesus. And then notice back behind Jesus, there's kind of like a river ditch, and that's also saying that it's some distance between us and Jesus.
So they're not really in the mountain, is that what?
Now, somebody pointed out over here, as Bob or Mike, that it's not really a mountain in this painting.
Well, I noticed too that like on the left, they're like all dead, and then on the right, they're like alive.
You're talking about the tree, yeah?
Yeah.
Why would you, and she's right, what she's pointing out is if you look at the two trees on the left, right, they're both dead.
Or all of it, like even the house is dark.
The house is
everything's
dark. Okay, great observation. All that stuff's dark. And then go on to the other side of the painting, and you got that live tree,
And the sun is shining.
the sun shining, and look at the buildings. Aren't the buildings better? The buildings are much more substantial on the right side of the painting. So I think that's a great observation, Anna, to point that out. Between the sides of between the sides of the painting, there's like this world of difference, isn't there?
Yes.
Except that the cow and the man walking beside it look more like they belong on, could be on the other side.
Well, he's toiling,
Oh, okay.
and they're not toiling on the other side. He's toiling on the left. They're not toiling on the right.
Well, there's two animals there because we can see the hind part of it.
Yep. Actually, I think there's three animals. I agree.
No,
I
there
agree
are
with Anna.
four.
There's three.
There are four.
Yeah.
Number 3, yeah, one.
Yeah, she's got the blow. By the way, she's on her tablet, so she can blow it up really big. And there's a lot of pixels in this one. This is a high pixel picture, so you can really blow it up. Scholars believe that in what Anna's pointing out, by the way, of the toil versus the leisure on the other side, the live tree versus the dead trees, the darkness versus the much lighter, the substantial buildings on this side, the insubstantial on this side. They're saying that there are two ways. You either follow Christ and you end up on the right side of the painting, or you don't follow Christ and you end up on the left side of the painting. There's two ways to go. That's what scholars would say. But you're great to point that out, Anna. It's a great observation.
Is there any significance to the fact that Peter and James, these two guys don't have sandals? We don't know. Moses has a pair, but we don't know about the rest. These guys are in a pair of feet. Is there?
If you're standing on holy ground, what does God say? Take off your shoes. You're on holy ground, right?
Okay.
And by the way, John was considered. The other reason that this disciple over here on the right is John was considered to be very young, because it's considered that he lived the longest and actually might have written Revelation. And so they're trying to show him as this young guy with the curly hair, the big. You know, when you're young, you have much thicker hair.
And it was,
Yeah. Yeah.
didn't whoever painted the Last Supper,
Yes.
didn't they portray John that
Yes,
same way?
they did. And John's
You know?
often portrayed this way.
Yeah, you have to really look because he, at first, looks very effeminate.
Yeah, correct. Yes. You're talking about Da Vinci's Last
Yes.
Supper. Yes. Yes. Okay, so we're taking up almost a half an hour. Anything else with this? This is a fascinating
What do you-
painting.
The tree, you mentioned something about the tree.
That the left side of the painting is not following Christ, and so you have the dead trees. It's plural, dead trees on both sides. That's to not follow Christ.
Well, what do
Yeah.
scholars have to say about the figures that are on the left side of the painting, like Moses and James?
Oh, well, they're not actually. What they're saying is the way of not following Christ is in the background, not in the foreground.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what they would say. All right, we need to move. We need to press on. Our next painting is by Raphael. Let's see. There we go. Raphael. He was 1483 to 1520. He is. Da Vinci was about 30 years older than he was, but he's a contemporary with Michelangelo. They were both painting at the Vatican at the same time. And as a matter of fact, Michelangelo, Da Vinci, and Raphael are sort of often considered the trinity of great master painters. He died at 37, very young, but he was enormously productive. And we have a large body of his work even today. His masterpieces are considered the papal apartments, or often they're called the Raphael rooms. They go by both those names. You can Google them when you get home. They're huge frescoes inside the Vatican. You can tour them now, but they used to be the papal apartments, or where the Pope stayed. Michelangelo, again his contemporary, disliked Raphael and came up with all kinds of conspiracies against him. While Raphael's painting the papal apartments, Michelangelo is doing the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel, which we probably all know. And Raphael he just didn't really participate in what Michelangelo got into. This Transfiguration, which we'll look at in a second, is his last painting. He did most of it himself. Probably the figure on the left, which you'll see in a moment, was completed by someone else. But for the most part, he did most of this painting. This is often considered, from the time it was painted until probably early 20th century, this was considered the masterpiece of the Renaissance. So this is really an incredible painting. You see this. This is still in the Vatican. I've seen this. Been to the Vatican twice, and it was in two different locations. One time it was actually in the sanctuary of St. Peter's, in the sanctuary. Another time it was in the museum, the Vatican Museum. So it's a revered painting. So again, this is after Bellini. This is actually the Medici's commissioned this to be an altarpiece. It's a huge painting for a church in France And the Medici who commissioned it became Pope Innocent, I think the third, although I could have that number wrong, and actually liked the painting so much he kept it. If you're Pope, you can do that, right? I like this so much, I'm going to keep it for myself. So it never actually went to this, becomes altarpiece, it's always been in the Vatican. So what do you see here?
Moses is on the right-hand side, it looks like.
Ah, yeah, Moses is on the right, and Elijah's on the left. You are correct.
You see the three apostles almost shocked, lying down.
Okay, they're shocked lying down. Notice Peter, is Peter dressed the same way? Is John dressed largely the same way they were in the previous painting? The colors of the clothes are largely the same. They're very similar.
What are the crowds doing?
Ah, what are the crowds doing, Anna? It's a good question.
What was the question?
What are the crowds doing?
Mostly looking away.
Looking away.
Somebody's pointing.
Remember the transfiguration story that Jesus was transfigured, right? They come down the mountain, and what happens when they come down the mountain?
As a group of people.
A group of people, and there's a boy who's got a demon, and the disciples can't cast it out. Remember that?
Yeah.
We just read that. So Raphael, yes, he did the transfiguration up here, but he also continued the story down below. As in, there's what's happening on the mountaintop, right? But there's also happening, or it's about to happen when they come down the mountain.
Who's the disciple in the corner?
Which
Bottom
corner?
left corner.
The what?
The bottom left corner. I
Bottom
assume
left
it's a
corner.
disciple.
Yeah, okay. The scholars believe, and by the way, this was probably the thing that was completed by somebody else. Not that Raphael didn't do a lot of this, but he probably an assistant he died, and probably an assistant completed this section. This is actually considered to be the gospel writer Matthew. Notice he's got the big book there.
Yeah.
He's writing his book and he's looking on, and notice what his hand, he's kind of saying, "Whoa, look at this." So he's seeing all this, and he's getting ready to write about it.
He's got extra toes.
He's got extra toes, yeah.
What?
And if my understanding is correctly, he has a book.
Right.
They didn't have books back then, they had scrolls.
Correct.
But this is medieval.
Correct. But you know what? Raphael never went to the Holy Land and didn't know that, but yeah.
Now this time we got other people looking and seeing.
Ah, who are those other people looking and seeing? That's a good observation, David. Scholars believe that this day, we have Transfiguration Sunday in the lectionary calendar, and I believe it's August 6th is where this is found on the Roman Catholic Church calendar of the feasts and fasts. And these would be the two saints that also have that as their feast day. So that's what that is. And I don't remember who those saints are, but so they're looking on. See, Transfiguration is the main event, right? But they're looking on. They actually have a view of heaven, right? Or the vision.
Well, to me, the foreground is the attention is on that child.
Okay.
Lots of finger pointing going on. People are throwing their hands up in frustration.
Okay. All kinds of stuff.
Then there's a sunlit field off to the right.
Yeah, is that sunrise or sunset?
Well,
Bob?
I don't know.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, but it's sunrise or sunset over there, right? Isn't that something over there? Okay.
It's a sunlit meadow. That's right.
Okay.
Who is the lady here? She must be important.
Ah, okay, great question, Mary Lou. She's talking about the lady over there, not the child with the demons over there. And right next to the left of that is this lady with her back to us, right? Mm-hmm. And she's sort of pointing. She's pointing toward the child. This is an insertion of Raphael to sort of bridge the story. Think about it. If you got Matthew here in front, right, in the left corner, and you got the disciples behind him, some of them are saying, "Hey, look at the guy." Some of them are saying, "No, Jesus will solve this." He's pointing up, right? And then on the other side, you have sort of the onlookers and the boy, and the father's probably in that green behind him. And she, as it were, is the bridge. She's bridging this story together. You see what I'm talking about, Mary Lou?
She is wearing blue, though.
Ah, she's wearing blue, okay? That royal blue.
And pink.
And pink. Almost like a Mary figure, isn't she?
Possibly Mary
Possibly.
Magdalene.
Maybe, yeah. She's not the Virgin Mary because we don't read about her in the story, but he inserted something significant here, and yeah, that's probably what it is.
Do you think there's any significance to the fact that nobody has any kind of footwear on?
Well, they often went in bare feet, but I don't know. Could be holy ground again. I don't know.
Yeah.
Now, is there just not enough resolution? Is there a halo, or is that just part of the light?
This was a high pixel. This is a good question. This was a high pixel picture. This is a famous painting, and so this is the way it looks. And so yeah, I think he's gotten away from the direct halo, but he's still it's Raphael's version of a halo. But you see, it's kind of blended into the sky. Does that make sense, David?
Well, it just seems that the color around his head is a little different than the rest of the
No, I would agree. He's glowing white, right? Glowing white, and yeah, he's got more of a halo on his head, and that's, again, I think that's Raphael's version of a halo.
Well, to me, that's the focal point of this painting, and it's usually not too far off center.
Okay.
This one is just, I mean, it's
Dead on center.
top.
Yeah. Okay,
That's
center
the first
top.
thing you see.
Okay. What's Jesus doing in here versus what's he doing in the Bellini painting or the Giovanni painting?
Well, in this one, his feet are not on the ground,
Ah, okay.
as with Moses and Elijah. In this one, they're more or less floating.
They're all floating, right?
Well, the three of them,
Yeah,
yes.
3 of them, okay?
Versus the other one we looked at, they had their feet on the ground.
Okay.
Jesus is also looking up here, where he's looking straight ahead in the other.
Okay.
It's almost like Jesus is praying in this one, and he's praising in this
Okay,
one.
he's praising this one, he's praying in this one. The other thing is the effect of looking straight ahead, like in the Bellini painting, where Jesus is looking straight ahead. You see that? I'm gonna look at it. This is a way to draw the viewer into the painting. Often you will see in paintings, particularly in the late Renaissance, there'll be all these figures looking all these different places, and there's one figure looking straight at you. And that draws you in because there's one figure looking straight at you, and that may be Jesus is doing it in the Bellini painting. Here you're right; he's looking up, right? That's the difference.
I think he's saying listen.
Yeah, and notice his hands are raised in both paintings, aren't they? I know. As Presbyterians, we don't do that, but they did raise their hands when they praised God. It's praise God. They lifted their hands in the Psalms. I know we don't do it as Presbyterians, but they did it back in in that age.
Actually, when I look at the central figure, to me, he appears to be looking up, slightly up, not down at all.
Yeah, Jesus is looking up. Yeah, that's what we were saying earlier. Jesus is looking up. That's what we said. Yeah, Mary Lou said he's praising God. He's looking up. Yeah, no, yes.
Why is this guy hiding his face?
He can't. This guy this is Peter probably. Oh, this one?
The guy in the green.
Oh, that's just probably James.
Yeah,
He just can't look. Yeah, he can't look. And look at John. He's got. They're all hiding their eyes. They can't look. It's really bright. It's a vision. Now down below, it's pretty obvious who the boy is, right?
Yeah.
It's pretty clear who the boy is, and the father's probably the one behind him. On that, and probably this is the crowd, because there's a crowd there. We read in the text is behind the boy and his father. On the other side, or the left side of the painting, is probably the disciples. So, you see the guy in the yellow with the big thick hair, kind of blondish, reddish, dirty blonde or brown or so. That's probably John. Just like in the other painting, right?
Point.
Right there. And actually, the guy way over on the left side, the upper left of the disciples, see that? Judas Iscariot, kind of removed. So this is some of what they thought.
Which one's Judas?
Probably this one way over here on the left, in the very left corner of the disciples, upper left corner.
I would think it'd be that one because he's turned his back on Jesus.
Maybe, you may be right, David.
Well, what makes you people think that that's Judas?
Because he's the one most removed from the work here that the disciples are trying to do. That may not be right, Joyce.
Yeah.
All right. Any other observations here before I move on to the last painting?
Colors are really intense.
Yeah, these are. Notice this. Notice the Bellini is. Notice how much brighter this is. Did you see how bright this was? He's really refining the use of light, as Bellini is, and Raphael's got, these are bold. What you would call them bold colors, Mary Lou? Very bold colors and lots of different colors. And remember, he's mixing these himself. He didn't go down to Hobby Lobby and get his paints. So this is some of the reason. Again, what did I say? From the time this was painted, that is the end of the 16th century, really to the early 20th century, this was considered the painting, the Renaissance painting. This was considered the masterpiece.
Beautiful.
And also because Raphael did it, Raphael is considered like one of the greats.
Where are the paintings physically?
If you look on the outline, the Bellini is in Naples today, and this one is in Vatican City. And like I said, it's been a couple different locations in Vatican City. And the last one we're going to look at is actually an altarpiece from Bologna. Bologna, Presbolonian, something like that. Okay. Any other comments about this painting? This is really an exquisite painting. Really something else. So, Ludovico Vucicaccio, or however you say it. He's in the 1600s, and he reinvigorated Italian art at the time. He has strong mood, broad gestures, lots of spiritual motion. The Transfiguration is an altarpiece for a church in Bologna, or it was. It's considered, close up, it's considered actually terrifying. And it's actually considered to be better from a distance. And I gotta confess, I'm gonna hand it out. This one did not have all the pixels. I see, Anna, I see your face. It does not have the pixels that the other two did. The other two had lots and lots of pixels. So friends, what do you see?
More color.
More color and bold color, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, and look how deep that red is on John's clothing, right? Mm-hmm. It's really deep, and the halo is very pronounced over Jesus' head. So really, and this is why he reinvigorates Italian painting. Joyce, it's really bold colors. What else?
Not as many people.
Okay, not as many people. He is just
have
drawn.
the six.
Yeah, the six, right? Jesus, Moses, Elijah, and the three disciples. That's it. Not like Raphael. Imagine painting all those people that Raphael had to do. It's a lot of people, isn't it?
So I'm guessing John's in the middle.
Yeah, John, again, the disciple Jesus loved, would be in the red, in the middle. And Peter, he's actually dressed the same way every time. He's older. And of course, John's got more hair, as younger men have lots more hair. And then Andrew would be the guy on the right side.
So this is on the left this time? He's returned to his spot on the left?
Why do you say that?
It looks like the figure on the left looks like it's holding a tablet.
Okay. What are those in his head?
Yeah. I was wondering why. I know it's not, but the first thing said he's got two horns.
You got two horns?
And I'm just, that's the first thing I saw. But
Okay.
it's no doubt there's some kind of a light coming down from the cloud.
Okay. Often Moses is portrayed with horns.
Really?
That's not unusual at all. We haven't seen that in the other paintings.
Why?
Because when Jerome translates the Old Testament from the Hebrew to Latin in the 4th century. It's the Vulgate or the Vulgate or the Vulgate, whatever you want to call it. And that becomes the standard Bible for centuries. And in that translation, he basically says when Moses comes down from the mountain in Exodus 34, what you were talking about earlier, and his face is glowing, he says there were rays of light. And so the rays of light often get translated or as horns in art. And so it's not unusual to see Moses in paintings or in sculpture, the famous sculpture in Rome where Moses has horns. Now, and again, it's not, we think of like demons with horns or the devil with horns. It's not that negative association. You got to get that out of your mind. Didn't have that yet. So Moses has horns, and he's got the tablet, as Keaton points out. Thank you. Oh, go ahead.
There are a lot of, like you said before, there are a lot of broad gestures, especially with the disciples.
Broad
and Jesus
gestures.
has a lot of bravado, like
Yeah. See, in the other two, he's doing this, right? In this one, he's telling, right? He's like proclaiming the word. Yeah, broad gestures, exactly. I think you're right, Keaton. And the disciples, too, have the broad gestures.
This time they're floating in a cloud.
Okay, they're floating, they're not even on the ground or just above the ground, they're floating in the clouds. Great observation, Anna. Notice, look at Jesus' feet. Look at the Raphael, and look at this one. Look at the feet of Jesus. Are they the same? No.
Oh, wait a minute. I would say yes.
They're pretty similar.
they're similar.
They're similar, but go ahead.
What I get caught up on is how far Raphael like pries the big toe away from the rest of the toes.
So
Well, they
Jesus, yeah.
Both.
You know, he's looking at the toes, though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It looks like his foot is the focal point here.
Okay, the foot becomes the focal point. This is in the Karachi.
Yeah, this one, the one
Yeah.
below.
Okay. Yeah, the Bologna one. Okay. Whereas, what is the focal point in the Raphael?
This,
Yeah, the head. In the Raphael. Oh, you think the woman becomes the focal point
that's the first thing I saw
instead of Jesus?
I sort of like draw like that besides Jesus.
Okay.
I thought it was interesting, Peter on the left, they're all in a cloud. Peter's resting his foot on the cloud.
Okay. Peter's resting his foot on a cloud.
See it? I mean, it's just, he's like pushing against the
Well,
cloud.
that's not Peter. That's Moses.
Okay, Moses,
Yeah,
sorry.
Moses is resting his foot on a cloud. Okay.
Moses, sorry.
Yeah, I'll give you that. Thank you.
So is Elijah.
So
Yeah,
the
so is
Elijah-
Elijah. Elijah's doing the same thing. They're sitting on clouds, literally. They're sitting on clouds. And Jesus is just sort of floating there.
Is that cloud 9 or?
I don't know.
But Jesus, while his garb is bright, he doesn't seem to be emitting as much light.
Okay. Would you say he's emitting more light in the Raphael? Okay. In other words, and what you're pointing out, I think, is Jesus is lit up. In the Raphael, the whole cloud behind him is lit up, right? And here, the halo's lit up, but the rest of the cloud behind Jesus is not nearly as lit up. Is that correct, David?
It's darker,
Yeah, it's darker. Okay.
more of
Nighttime.
a reddish yellow
Okay.
It's sundown.
than a
Okay.
bright white.
Look at the ages. Look at the age.
They're old.
Between Moses and Elijah, who looks older?
Elijah.
Moses looks far older, right? And Elijah looks far younger in the Karachi,
Very young.
right? And they look the same age. Look at the Raphael. they're both decently old, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and in the Bellini, they're both decently old, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Did Elijah die young?
Okay. Good point here. Thank you, Keaton. What a good question. We don't know. We know Moses died quite old, and Elijah Elijah did not die. He was assumed.
Wait, he was one of the prophets that was taken?
Yes, he
Taken
was
up in a
assumed.
chariot.
Taken up in a chariot. And so probably the idea was, since he didn't die, he's portrayed as being younger. Now, some people would say Moses was assumed, but that's a lot more of a debate on that one. Some people say he died, but Elijah was definitely assumed into heaven.
Okay.
That's how the story goes.
Wait, and didn't he have like Jeremiah as like his under like prophet in
Elisha.
Elisha?
Yeah.
Yeah. And then Jeremiah witnessed him being taken up and then assumed his role as.
That was Elisha.
Oh, okay.
Elisha, yeah. What do you got? And I tell you got something over there.
Everybody's cloth besides Elijah.
Everybody's cloth beside Elijah?
Elijah.
Oh, he got the bare chest. Oh, okay. Well, I don't know. John's chest is kind of bare, too.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, John's kind of got the bare chest, too.
Better body.
Oh, the better body. Elijah's got the better body.
Well,
So Elijah was ripped.
What is this, Chester?
along those lines, these last two examples
Yep.
show the detail for human anatomy and the muscles
Yep.
that was, I guess, just evolving about this time.
Okay. And what you're
Because-
telling me is that the Bellini doesn't necessarily show as much of the detail.
The latter two are showing more of the science in the muscles
Right.
and everything. And I believe at that time, right, they weren't allowed to have cadavers.
You got people like Da Vinci and Michelangelo who are actually sneaking into
Yes.
morgues and actually dissecting cadavers and looking at the way the muscles actually move. And often they also paint them naked first, and then they put on clothing afterward. And so they're showing a lot of the muscles. Now, in Greco-Roman art, they show very much of the muscles. Like you look at a sculpture, a Greek sculpture, and you can just see the lines and the muscles and all that other stuff. And then they sort of got away from it in the medieval times. And here, yeah, they're starting to get back to it. It's a good point, Joyce. They're actually getting back to what the anatomy really looked like. And really, it even goes back to Raphael. See the lines on those bodies?
Yes.
And the muscles and the tone. They're all ripped, Anna.
But it wasn't it illegal for them to take the bodies? And they could have,
It
if
was.
caught.
Yeah. I don't know when it became legal, but yes, you're right. They were sneaking into morgues to do this.
And if they'd gotten caught, there was a big price to
Yes,
pay.
yes, you're correct. Now, I don't know if it's true by Carracci's time, but certainly in the time, you can read about it in the time of Michelangelo, that yes, that was true.
There's a big
That would be
difference.
the agony and the ecstasy. You can read about him sneaking into morgues. I don't know if that's true or not, but yes, that's the story.
There's a big difference between the Bellini and the other two as far as expression goes. But this really shows intense expression.
Okay, so what she's,
Especially in
yeah.
Jesus'
I mean,
face.
No.
and
So
Moses'.
what she's saying is the Carracci shows intense expression.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Definitely.
okay.
There is some.
And there's some expression in the Raphael. There's less expression in the Bellini.
Right.
And that's just over time, because the Bellini is the oldest one, and the Raphael is next, and then the Carracci would be the last one that we're looking at tonight. That's the youngest one. So again, Bellini's real innovation is the use of the light. See how bright that painting is? Even today. I mean, think how old this is. It's still just this bright painting that comes back at you.
Jesus, all of them. Jesus has brown hair. He couldn't have had brown hair.
Why couldn't Jesus have brown hair?
Well, he came from a part of the country where Almost everybody had black hair.
Oh, okay, you think it was black hair? Brown hair?
You think so?
But this is
Well, I mean-
transfiguration, so he transfigured to brown hair.
Well, I mean,
Certain
also,
figure around here.
all of the figures in the painting look incredibly Caucasian.
Yes.
If you,
Yes, and these, and it's a good point, Keaton. These guys can't afford to travel to the Holy Land or didn't travel to the Holy Land. They were doing this out of their imagination and kind of what they read and maybe what they've heard from others. Whereas when you get really to the 20th century or even the late 19th century, those people like Tanner that we looked at. Remember the Tanner painting we like so much of the Annunciation? He actually traveled to the Holy Land and actually saw what they were looking at, or saw what he was painting for in real life. So yeah, it's a good point. Jesus had blonde hair and blue eyes. Did you know that?
You don't know that.
well, blonde hair and blue eyes were also sought after traits in Europe. I mean, even in Europe. So.
Yeah, but probably not. But I'm joking, of course. Very limited. All right. So, what can we learn from these paintings? What are the lessons we're going to take away from this?
Well, these people who were definitely had influenced, this is a truly significant point that they want to bring to the people who may or may not be able to read the story or whatever
Okay,
the case.
you mean the Transfiguration.
Transfiguration.
Transfiguration is very important and they want to bring this message to the people.
Yes.
Okay, very good, Mike. Thank you.
The innovation in the use of light, and I just noticed the use of shadows in
Yeah.
this one.
Yeah, and they will become more and more advanced with the use of shadow, and really this will reach its peak in, you've heard of Caravaggio?
Caravaggio.
And Raphael? Those are like, they're masters of light and shadow. But yeah, they're slowly advancing into the use of light and shadow into these. So yeah, definitely. And we'll eventually look at a Raphael, and he's just like the master of using the light and shadow to communicate a message. So yeah, but good point. Coming along. What else?
And let's advance in techniques from, I mean, they're very different paintings, and they advance to a real, I would say the last one is a lot of expression, a lot of emotion
Okay.
that you don't see
Okay.
in the
The emotion advances.
Right.
And we talked about this that back when we did Byzantine painting, there was like no emotion, right?
Right.
And Giotto's like the first guy to really try to put some emotion into this stuff, and that's advancing, and you see that here.
Definitely.
They're really advancing in the use of the facial features and the hands and the body and how they make emotion happen. Yeah, definitely, Bob. Great observation.
Also advancement in the use of motion.
Movement in the painting, motion in the painting, yeah. Definitely. These guys are almost like statues, right?
Yes.
I'm looking at the Bellini, whereas when you get over here to the Carracci, they're all in motion, aren't they? Yeah, definitely. And again, this will really reach its peak with Caravaggio and Raphael. Rembrandt. These are like painting. They're like always in motion. It's like it's happening right in front of you. Definitely. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good.
There we go. Let's pray. Lord, thank you for the lessons that we can learn from these paintings. Thank you that we're looking into the imagination of these artists, and that we can learn from the way that they've portrayed these and learn more about the Transfiguration and its importance and what you are doing through it. We pray that these lessons may gel in our minds, and then we will walk away different people than when we came. Amen.